Today we're going to put in an invisible zipper in a little cotton skirt. And it's important to think about your seam allowances and how you would finish them. Here we're doing an industry standard just serging, and that's really appropriate at the edge of where we're going to put an invisible zipper. An invisible zipper needs a different foot than most sewing machines have, and so you can see this one, they look like little rabbit ears from that direction. And that allows the zipper teeth to ride in that channel and get the needle close enough to the zipper so it actually looks like a seam on the outside instead of having a gap. You don't want to see the zipper tape from the outside. So this machine, it's a separate foot that goes on. Some sewing machines, it might pop off here and then be attached, so it depends on your machine. I know years ago for the Singer sewing machine, they actually made a plastic one that popped off and on, and it was movable. I also like to take my thread down and pull it through the foot, because the foot does not have a slit where you can slide the thread, so you want that thread to go out the back. So the invisible zipper, when you open it, you'll see that the teeth are rolled towards the tape. We press that with an iron to flatten it out so that your needle is able to get closer to the teeth. So here's the one I've pressed. I'm going to take my fabric and I'm going to grab a couple pins. It's always a good idea to pin things. So your zipper gets put on the skirt from the outside. So you want the outside of the fabric facing up. The zipper is part of a seam. So if I lay this here, face up, flip it over so that the edge of the tape here is towards the edge of the fabric. If you do it the other way, it's not going to zip up. So you want to bring the zipper to the very top of the fabric. You don't want to extend it up, because when you go to add a facing or a waistband here, you want the stitching to be above this little metal stop that's at the top of the zipper. And I'm just going to stick 2 pins in it and manipulate it as I go along. Okay. So you want to put the zipper so that the zipper tape is on, if we're doing the left side of the skirt, we're putting it on the left side of the presser foot. Always, sorry, I broke the thread. There we go. Do it again. You want to get it under enough that it's going to be easy to start. And then you look at your stitch length. Always make sure that you've got your stitch length set correctly. I'm going to move this down to maybe like number 3, so it isn't quite so tight in case there's a mistake and I need to take it out. And you're just going to start to sew. I always think it's a good idea to hang onto your tail when you start, because otherwise it gets sucked down in the machine and you get a ball of thread on the back that looks like a bird's nest. So because this is permanent, it's not coming out, we're going to backstitch. So I'm backstitching and then going forward. So just push your teeth over, but try to keep your zipper from getting pulled to the left. You want to try to keep the zipper tape close to the serging that I did there, or whatever your seam finish is. You're trying to make the needle hit the 5/8 inch part, so that's your seam. If you take too much, you're making your skirt smaller. If you go too far to the right, you're making your skirt bigger. So you can't go past the zipper pull. That's where it ends. So you're going to backstitch there. I go back and forth a couple times because you don't want the bottom of the zipper to come loose after you've put your seam together, because it'll be hard to get the foot in and navigate doing a repair. So we end at the zipper pull. And you want to cut this thread short. You don't want to leave a tail hanging because it'll get caught in the zipper when you're zipping it up. So now what I'm going to do is flip it over, zip it up, and you'll see that it actually it's in the seam. So then we want to do the other side. It's a little tricky. You got to try to remember that it's going in the seam. So I always lay it down like this, flip it over this way. I'm going to unzip it. And we're going to do the same thing over here. So my zipper tape is at the top. It's going up against the stitching, and it's going to come down this way. There's another pin right there. So now we're sewing the left side. So you just kind of leave these stacked like this, and then the zipper teeth are going to go on the right side of the presser foot, up in that little bunny ear. So I got it started. I'm just going to come down. The reason you start at the top on the left side is because you can't start at the bottom. They won't be the same length. You can't get the foot that close to the zipper head. So again, I'm back stitching. I'm going to take it out. Make sure you always bring your needle to the utmost position when you're taking it out, the fabric out of the machine, because otherwise you might have the thread loop down inside and it looks like you have 3 threads instead of 2. So now that I've finished that part, I'm taking the foot off. I don't need it anymore. I'm going back to my regular foot. It is possible to do a invisible zipper with a regular foot, or a regular zipper foot. It's just hard to get really close to the teeth. So now I'm going to open it up and lay it down. I'm going to hang on to the tail. I'm going to zip it up, and you can see that it looks really nice. You don't see the zipper tape. So now we have to do the seam that's at the bottom. So I'm matching up this bottom seam. I'm lifting up on this tail a little bit, and this is a really tricky part. You're trying to sew a seam that comes up and points at the stitching. You will not be able to get all the way up in here. What will happen is you'll get a bump if you try. So I'm putting my needle through just slightly, like 1/8 of an inch below the stitching, but I'm going to turn it over, make sure it's coming up on the same location in the back. And then I like to do like a little sort of up and down motion with the pin. So it's kind of making almost like an arrow that's pointing at the seam. And then you can, check your seam, match it up. You can have a few pins if it helps to navigate sewing that seam. And you're going to start at the bottom. If you start at the bottom and you didn't pin it, you didn't spread it out, if one thing was up a little bit, you would wind up with a big bump at the end of the zipper. So this part you want to make sure is really smooth. So you kind of go from there down, and then I'm going to sew my 5/8 inch seam. Normally I sew everything with matching thread, but because we're demonstrating and I want you to be able to see, that's why I'm using like really light thread. So I'm coming up to my zipper. Hopefully we'll get a really nice finish here. So I'm going right towards that pin, but I don't want to sew over the pin, so I'm going to pull it out a little bit and keep going. So I'm probably going to leave about a 1/4 inch or so that I didn't, because you just can't get up there. You'll get this part of the zipper caught in it, and it'll be a hot mess. So I'm going to trim my threads. Let's turn it over, see what it looks like. So see how that kind of matches up pretty good. Now, you don't want this part flopping around inside and stabbing you. So you would press this seam open, make sure everything's really smooth, and then take this part of the zipper tape and attach it to the seam allowance. So you're not going through to the outside. You don't want to see any stitching on the outside. And I'm just going to stitch the bottom inch or so at the bottom of the tape. You don't go across. You just come down the side of that tape, and I think I need to move my needle over a little. Yep, that's going to catch the edge there. So I'm just attaching that to the seam allowance so that it doesn't pop up. You can do one side or you can do both sides. Just make sure that you don't like do it so that it's popping up. So I'm going to do the other side. Just attach it to keep it from moving around. Because if this zipper becomes dysfunctional and you have to take it out and you need to put a new one in, navigating this corner down here once that seam is together can be a little bit difficult. So there we go. Let's open it. There we go. See? And you just want to press everything. So press it with the zipper zipped up. Try not to pull like this and expose the zipper. Do a soft. Let the two edges of fabric come together as a seam. Oops. Maybe we should start over.